Okay, what you're looking at right now is the preparation for making your 8 notepads. And here you see the chipboard right here. This adds the stability and support to the small notepad itself. Then you have the printed sheet. That will be the size of your notepad. You will have 10 sheets of paper per pad. Then we have another sheet of chipboard and some more printed document. Now, this paper here was actually printed on the offset lithographic printing machine. And I know that by looking at it because we have color bars here on the bottom, and that is not standard with digital printing. One thing you should be aware of when we cut offset lithographic work, we must be aware of the guide that was used to guide this paper through the press. It goes through the machine this way, so this is called the lead edge. The guide side, it can be actually either side, but in this case the guide is set for this side. All paper is pushed to a little spring and registered to this side and this side. So the paper goes through the machine consistently the same way every single sheet. Now, the purpose of that is to push all irregularities of the paper to this side right here, the non-guide side, and the tail of the paper. And I can demonstrate that there. If I jog these two together, this action is called jogging, and it's very, very important to make all the paper jog to the lead and the guide. And if you look at this here, you will actually see that the chipboard is a little bigger than the paper. So if this was all paper, all irregularities would be pushed to this one side right here. Now, the paper cutter itself, it is programmable, so we're going to program the cut. And the paper cutter, you can use a ruler to do your measurements, or you can use a light. Now, if you look at the light, you can see the light on my fingers right there. That's the light. That's the blade there that I'm touching right there. The blade will strike at this point right here. So the crop marks that we see on the paper here, that's where we want the blade to strike the paper. The first 2 cuts are quite important. They must be as much on the crop mark as possible. The idea is to cut the paper where you won't see the crop mark. It's just split in the middle. Once the first 2 cuts are made, we simply work on the document size. In this case here, your notepad is 4 inches by 5 inches. These notepads are all the same. They're all 4 by 5. Now, one of the important things with the jogging to the lead edge and the guide side is that we must position this corner into one of the corners of the paper cutter. It can be either the corner over here on my left or the corner on the right, but it must be corner to corner. So we're going to use this corner right here, and we're going to set it in here. Now, what we need to do is move the back gauge, that thing along the back there, that is called a back gauge. That is the positioning from the back gauge to the light. That's how far away the paper is. We need to get the paper to this crop mark right here. So I'm going to move the paper back, move the back gauge, like so. And that looks pretty okay. And all I'm going to do is cut the paper at this point. The machine is extremely safe. You cannot operate it unless you push these 2 buttons at the same time. So I'm pushing one here, nothing happens. And what you see here, if I put my hand in front of these beams here, the action that I'm doing here, any cutting will stop and the blade will immediately retract. So it is a very, very, very safe piece of equipment to be around, as long as there's only one person doing the cutting. All right, so I'm going to push the buttons. And that's our first cut. And I did forget to set up the program, so I'm going to go ahead actually and do that right now. We got a program set up here, program number 1. We'll just call it number 1. And we're going to make this cut again. Okay, so that's our first cut, and our program is asking us here if we want to enter it to record it. And as I look at this here, we're pretty much on the crop mark there. We could actually bring it forward a little bit more, cut a little bit more off it. So we're just going to bring it forward just a little bit. And trim this little piece of paper off. And we look at it, you can actually see where the crop mark has been sliced right there. You can see it on the paper. So that is acceptable. I'm going to enter that cut. Okay, now the rule of thumb is when we're rotating paper, we will rotate it where the freshly cut side goes to the side plate. So I'm going to do that rotation. And I'm going to move the back gauge back. And that looks like it might be the crop mark. I'll go ahead and cut it. And if we look at that there, we can see that's pretty darn close, pretty much right on the crop mark there. So that would be an acceptable cut, and we can enter it. You can change the value of your cut at any time before you enter the program. But you must remember that you can always cut more paper off, but you cannot stick it back on again. All right, so now we're into our third cut. Again, we're going to do the rotation, like so. And at this point, we don't need to utilize the light. We actually must utilize the document value numbers. Remember, we are 4 by 5. We are cutting 2 from this side right here. So we know 4 plus 4 is 8. So we need to cut our document at this point right here at 8 inches. So we just simply enter the 8, and the back gauge will position itself. And we pop it right in here, and we cut it again. And at this point, we're not going to adjust anything here. We can't make the document smaller because the customer wants 4 inch by 5 inch. So here we have 8 inches. At this point, it's convenient to cut this document into 2 this way. So that's exactly what we're going to do at this point. And we know that the finished size is going to be 4 inches. So we can either subtract 4 from this number or simply send the back gauge to 4 inches. So there it's going to come forward to 4 inches. And we simply do the cutting. And please note that when all this is going on, I'm watching where the light is to make sure that everything is correct. So we go ahead and cut that. And you can see this is getting closer and closer to your notepad. Now we need to focus on this side of the document. All of these are the same. The 4 notepads are exactly the same, so we can stack them one on top of the other without a problem. If there's too many and you don't want to stack them, you don't really need to do that. You can just continue with the program. Again, we go by the numbers. It's 5 inches, and 5 inches is 10 inches. We'll simply input the 10, and the back gauge will position. And we're going to cut a little piece off the top and cut it in 2. It is not an economical way to cut the paper if you cut this to 5 inches first. That's not the best way to cut the paper. That is very, very incorrect. What happens here, if you think of this as a huge stack of heavy paper, if you cut this to 5 inches, this one is correct. But you must move this one out of the way so that you can get to the finished one. Then you must bring this one back in again so that you can finish it. So it's a total waste of time cutting the 5 inches here and then coming back to finish this. And time is money, and it's not very productive to do it that way. And we're going to enter this again. And then we simply either subtract the 5 inches or input the value of 5 because we're doing 2 up. And we cut. All right, so, and we finish our program. So that's your notepads there, all with the paper and the chipboard. The program is set up here so that for the next job, which is going to be exactly the same, I simply bring our cut up to the very cut number 1. I send the back gauge. Okay, so we've cut the notepads, and here they are, pretty much ready for padding. We're going to bring them to the padding rack and apply the padding compound to this side. But I should point out that the next batch of notepads to be cut exactly the same size as this, they are programmed into the cutter. All we do is call up that program, send the information, and the back gauge will position itself for all cuts needed. All we need to do is rotate the paper and cut it. All right, so off we go to the padding rack, and we'll finish these notepads here for you. Okay, so here we are at our state-of-the-art padding rack, totally handmade. Does the trick. All we're going to do is pad the notepad here. We're going to apply the compound obviously to this side, but we can apply it anywhere we want. So whatever the customer wants, that's what we supply. But they want the padding here. So we're going to jog again, this nice and neat. We want this as flush as possible so that the padding compound penetrates the paper and the chipboard. So we simply set them one on top of the other. They're nice and neat. And we're going to put a little separator in here. And then we're going to place some more 4x5 pads on top of it here. Then we're going to weigh it down. Okay, so that pretty much pushes the air out. It gets the paper all nice and close. And now we apply the padding compound. This is just like painting. There's the compound right there. You can see it's very viscous. And we want to apply that from the center of the notepad out. Always going from the center to the outer edges. Working your way down. If you want to start in the middle and work your way up, it doesn't matter. But the idea is to coat all of the paper with the compound. And just go side to side, side to side. For obvious reasons, we don't want to be coming in. We do not want any compound on the side of the notepad itself, otherwise the notepad will not tear properly. Very, very important. So we just put this on, and it dries in about an hour. And there we have pretty much one side done. And then it'll be a repeat performance on this side right here. So when the notepads are dry, it's going to look like one big little notepad like that there. At this point, we take the notepad and we have to separate them. We take a regular utility knife and we make sure we separate in the right spot, and we cut these open one by one. And there you see our notepads right here, all stuck together. Nothing on the side here, nothing on the side there. One little notepad, finished.